Well, good morning. Although we have not officially decided the official medium of communication, but since there is a very distinguished visitor or guest from Dubai, Executive Director Dr. Kazim, with due respect to his presence, I use my power as a chair of this session and choosing English as an official medium. However, if there are any of you who would prefer to be using Korean or other languages, perhaps you can be allowed to use Korean, not the other languages. Then we'll have two ladies who will simultaneously interpret what we'll be speaking in Korean. So let us start. Today we have about an hour in this special semi-closed session in which we have two distinguished presenters. Professor You-Kyung Kim of Hankuk University of Foreign Languages, and then Executive Director Kazim, who will speak on national branding as well as the importance of human resources management as a main pillar in branding Dubai, or in designing Dubai as a state aiming toward becoming the global leader. So after having these two presentations, then we'll open the session with Q&A as well as debate. So since we have not decided who will be speaking first, Professor Kim. Please give big hands to Professor Kim.
Good morning. As I was introduced by Professor Cho, I'm Kim You-Kyung, Professor in Hankuk University of Foreign Studies and the President as Korean Advertising Society. Since he chose to use English as an official language, I'm forcefully to use that because so many Korean people. But you know, the session is session, so we have to keep that officiality. Today I'm going to give you a brief introduction of branding Korea in terms of performances and tasks. I've been given 20 minutes, so I have to skip something off, and then I better hurry myself. And my agenda will start from nation branding in terms of concept and process, and all the way to current status and current efforts, and sometimes. And then I will have some insight and lessons from country cases. And also, finally, I'm going to have some propositions. Probably we'll have a professional from Dubai, so we can get some different idea and a picture for our nation branding. So I'll start with nation branding concept and process. This is just quick. It's worthwhile to look at some definition, but I'm not going to go by it individually. Nation branding is the process of the soft power building, which means making target audiences and target countries as what to do what you want them to do. It's a nation branding, but there are more practices but less theories in this area. In branding the nation, we have to follow this guideline. I call the nation branding management, NBM. We have to start that with a substance, which is national identity, from all the way from the left to the right, from national identity and branding national identity, and some key messages from national identity, nation brand identity. And the next one is forms as a communication channel. And finally, the effects. Those consist of three different categories: and the substance, forms, and effects. it's kind of closely similar to the strategic brand management system, applied in corporate and product and services. But we can reapply and reorganize sometimes. We can, but at least we can have some tips from these guidelines. How about the current status of Korea in terms of the national competitiveness? Korea's national competitiveness, as you all may know, and in global markets have been fluctuating, and gradually plunging down. According to the daily newspaper and 한국경제, all that they report repeatedly, our ranking changes, very fluctuating. So now it's, I think, 31 or 32 in competitive power. And if we move on to the branding power of Korea, even though we have the 13th of GDP ranking, and we still have 30 or more country brand ranking. So value of Korea's brand is below 30% of Korea and national economy. That says, Korea country brand valuation is only 1/6 of Japan and 1/26 of USA. Still a long way to go. Simon Anholt is very famous and sometimes very notorious in evaluating the Korean nation branding in Korea, in around this area. Korea was ranked 30 or more. Our ranking has been gradually and steeply declining in diverse categories such as export, governance, culture, people, tourism, immigration, and investment. But still, export index looks much better. In terms of the country contemporary image of Korea, compared to rival countries or competitors, country image of Korea lacks familiarity, uniqueness, and strength. So therefore, it does not provide a special value for foreigners. As you see in the chart, right side, the source of nation image, there are, I applied that Simon Anholt. I'm not saying that Simon Anholt model is quite right, but that's for my experience, for my convenience. I use this one. Sources, from people all the way to tourism, our image is stagnant and being traditional. Whereas other countries, the USA, Japan, other advanced countries have many diverse categories. They have very distinguished and prominent personality and image. How about our past efforts for branding, building brand Korea? Nation branding in Korea is closely related to the emergence of dynamic Korea. When the 2002 FIFA World Cup was approaching, Korea needed an effective nation brand tool to promote itself around the world. That's dynamic Korea. Previous government of Korea pushed all the policies to increase country brand value by using this dynamic Korea and other sub-brands campaigns, and the umbrella brand and a strategic brand. So now we began to get rid of the chronic misperception of value for money and transformed into premium brand. Why dynamic Korea? Is it rational? Is it valid? Or yes, people say it's valid. In consequence, as a result, it's valid. Korea can be described, we have to trace back, to the origin or how it is valid. Korea can be described with many words. However, the most appropriate descriptions representing Koreans' vibrant spirit, cultural heritage, and present performances. And also, we mix that dynamism with morning calmness. We have that reasons, I mentioned always Korea has risen from the ashes Korean War and a modern democracy and working toward the national reunification, all things very dynamic. Korean popular culture and Hallyu and Korean wave, also all things, related to dynamics. We can say that. And also, we are now emerging as a technological powerhouse in 21st century. Let's take a briefly look at Korean dynamism, what it looked like. that I drew this picture. I'm not sure it's right. We have root of morning calm. We have flower of dynamic Korea. But one root has can have many different kind of flowers, but that flower is one. But that dynamism is essentially symbolized the aspiration of the Korean people to further develop the limitless passion and energy. Morning calm has inspiration, whereas dynamic Korean has an aspiration. But that was, the efforts that we have been focusing on was only functional dynamism with a hardy, energetic nature, very functional. But they overlooked 4 other side dimensions of Korean dynamism. I made this one: emotional dynamism, the spiritual dynamism, Confucius dynamism, intellectual dynamism. So many things. I can't just go by in detail in video because the time is running. But we have now. It's the time to move on to the next step of Korean dynamism. Under umbrella brand, as an umbrella brand of Dynamic Korea, endorsed sub-brand, which is the tourism brand. This is Korea Sparkling. You may have heard this campaign that was born as a tourism brand and communicated throughout the world. It's been only 2 years. They are going to conduct some research for the evaluation. We'll see what's going to happen. And in addition, we had other sub-brand activities, Korean culture and promoting branding Korean culture. As you know, we have 6 Han styles: Korean writing, Korean foods, houses, clothing, paper, music. The relevant ministry wants to brand all the things as an Han style, and Hallyu also. And we have very many symbols related to our cultures, representing our Korean cultural peculiarity. And also branding premium Korean, IT Korea in the hope of elevating country of origin effects. Yeah, according to the current research results, people associate our Korea with the dynamism and high tech. I don't know if that's the result of that promotion. Oh, sorry. Currently, as the new government comes in and at the inauguration ceremony of the new president Lee, she declared we need to brand Korea. We have to transform, rebrand, and revitalize our current status. So recently, nation branding was driven from the top policymaker and supported by a central coordination and leadership. NBC was being launched, and with the support of public and private partners, and this is Nation Brand Committee. In Dynamic Korea, it's been playing, and for 7 or 8 years, it's being revisited for its modification, revitalization. Other policy brandings, the tourism, culture, investment, export, even diplomacy are being discussed across diverse public sectors, such as local governments and public administration. They are trying to brand themselves. Country cases, I'm going to review this very quickly. Now we are living in a world of country brands. Many countries capitalize on the nation brand image for promoting all these, different policy categories. Denmark, United Kingdom, New Zealand, Singapore, France, Dubai, and Malaysia. They're very famous in branding the nation. They had some success story. I'm going to take a quick look at the Dubai had outside aspirations set by key policymakers, and so now it transformed from a desert city to a financial hub and tourism center. And New Zealand is very famous. They transformed the Southwest Pacific area country into the world's most desirable place to visit in 2006. Now they are changing, from 100% pure to new thinking, New Zealand. The United Kingdom. I thought the Susan McCarthy will be joining our session, but since she is not here, I have to say this: the Cool Britannia failed, but they are now moving on to with a new approaches for another success. That I think the UK, or sometimes OK UK. There's so many campaigns there. But with different segmentation strategy. Singapore. Well, you may all know that Singapore in a change, their objective is to achieve a strong brand recognition among travelers and a position Singapore as a premier travel destination around the world. But government, supports very strongly and it set up ensures integration while enabling segment-specific strategy. They're very systematic and a very scientific implementation followed. In terms of the key lessons from country cases, there are so many countries, they have to start the brand the nation. I can say that key issues, whether they have to transform or revitalize or rebrand a nation, which one is ours? We have to take that. Many other countries, they know that they have the choice and focus strategy. They know what they are, what they are standing at in the global markets. But first of all, what's more important is a strong central coordination of leadership. And next one is internal branding. We have to internalize this nation branding goal consistent with the nation brand identity. And prior to external communication, that means the sharing and resonance is very important. And if once umbrella identity sets up, it should be applied to across the multiple areas. Not individually playing, in different area and in different categories. And the strategic campaign should have a roadmap from a long-term perspective. In accordance with the national vision and mission. And IMC, integrated marketing communication strategy should follow. Advertising and PR campaigns are not enough. Finally, I'm going to give you some propositions for future horizon to have a better brand Korea. We may have some efficient Q&A and debates. I made this one in a hurry, but I'm going to give you some tip and information about how we're going to do in the future, and in terms of what are problems and challenges we are being faced with, and what will be the proposition and the tasks in the future. The problems and the challenges in branding Korea. First of all, I would pinpoint the problem. One of the problems, Korea does not have an easily recognizable or a very up-to-date image, as we have seen from the research results. We have no substance, what to say. We have no what to say. We only have how to say. So, especially in North Korea and in Europe, they don't know what we are. So a recent poll indicated only 1% of European knew anything about Korea, 3% US, 23% in Japan. That represent that issue. The Korea lacks that. That is going to next question, next problem. That's overall identity. Do we have an identity? We have to ask ourselves: Do we have a national identity? We do not have a national identity, overall identity that incorporates our diversities. We do have to have the holistic view rather than a single lens based on a narrow view. Dynamism, for example, Korean dynamic Korea. If we focus on functional perspective, then we can say that it's only one single lens. So dynamic Korea will have a mixed feelings from outside and inside. Opinion leaders don't like it, but grassroots like that. In developing and emerging nations like dynamic Korea, But advanced countries such as North America and Europe do not like this. Also, as you may all know, the PR agency, we say 국정홍보처, PR agency disbanded. So National Brand Committee disbanded. The government, that's why therefore the government momentum stalled momentarily. So there is no progress in branding the nation right now. Dynamic Korea has been playing for seven or 8 years. That's why it's very stereotypical and very strong. That means it's very hard to broaden beyond the Dynamic Korea. Too many messages. We have different identities across the nation and overseas. Dynamic Korea, Premium Korea, IT Korea, High Seoul. And there's 220 global government agencies, government cities and provinces, across the nation. They all have their own brand. So we have too many messages. That's image chaos. Image chaos will result in. Despite the strong IT heritage and industrial base of many successful global brands, LG, Samsung, Hyundai, but direct association with Korean origin is very limited. Another challenge and a problem is Korea tends to perceive itself through the eyes of people inside Korea. So how Korea sees themselves is the wrong start pointing for global nation brand position or reposition. We are proud of kimchi or bulgogi. Is that really what they want to see, what they want to enjoy? Is that really influencing factors or influentials to make them evaluate our country as an advanced nation? It's not. They like that. Every country have their own cultural local foods, but that may or may not affect the future of the nation. And finally, the propositions for better brand Korea. We need the strategic brand management process from now. We need what to say. We need substance. We need nation identity. What's nation identity? As I mentioned earlier, we have root of morning compass, but we have a flower of dynamic. Root of Korea, I call it that's essential identity. Flower as dynamic Korea is constructive identity. We can construct any identity from this essential, the essence of the essential identity. But we did not do that. Nation Brand Committee should play a role in a regular government body with a sufficient budget and guidance on its role and objectives. It should not be fade away temporarily, and the next government will come in and disband it. That kind of incidents should not happen. Strong central coordination and leadership should continue. And efficient brand architecture with umbrella brand, whether it's Dynamic Korea or other brand. I think the government is now considering some points, whether we have to change that or we modify that. We need to have a close partnership between all sectors, government, business, and the civil society should proceed. And creating national identity, as I mentioned, should take precedence over nation brand campaign. Brand campaigns will make some contribution to branding the Korea, but that's necessary, but not sufficient. So we have to revisit and rebrand or revitalize the problems of a Dynamic Korea campaign. And we have to clarify, prioritize in the sequence the long-term goal for Korea's brand initiatives. That's why I recommend for choice and focus strategy. We have a lot of things. We have governance, culture, export, diplomacy, investment, and immigration. We have everything. But we need to have a choice and focus strategy, even though it is IT or export or diplomacy. We can have them some brand architecture based on the role and responsibility, strategic role and responsibility. Finally, we need to have the evaluation system. We are very being swayed from by the external the evaluation result from the overseas, Simon Arnold and OECD and IMD, WEF. They they announced their research result regarding the branding nations or the brand evaluation. I understand that we have our own peculiar system, as Professor Zhou, as a director, 산업정책연구원이죠. He will take a look at it, and then he will tell us about that a little more. And we need our proper nation brand equity system to be developed and then operate for periodical measurement. We have to cultivate that, very competitively. Finally, questions and issues to share. I wanna hear some opinions and answers from Ayoub or the people from floors. Are we supposed to transform or revitalize or rebrand our nation? How about the dynamic Korea as a nation brand? We have to keep, or how we have to transform that, revitalize or rebrand? We have to choose. If you take choice and focus strategy to have global competitive advantage, what area or category will be the best? Finally, what do you think NBC should do in order to elevate made in Korea value or country of origin effects? I want to listen to your opinion. Here what I've prepared so far, as I used about more than 20 minutes, about 20 minutes, yes. That's it. Thank you very much for listening.
Well, thank you, Professor Kim, for your very informative and kind of comprehensive presentation on the nation branding. Now we have Dr. Executive Director Ayoub Kazim of Device Knowledge Village. But I always admire him for his role as in effect, the Minister of Education in Dubai, as well as his role to execute what he plans. So both planner and executor of Dubai's education policy and system, Dr. Kazim.
Thank you, Professor Cho. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to be here today in this session, national branding session. For a fact, I was telling Professor Cho that it's been like now, in 1 year I have been here in Korea for the third time. So that shows how close Korea is to my heart. And then Professor Cho said, well, I have been in Dubai 7 times in 1 year. So, it's closer, I guess, to his heart. Dubai is closer to his heart. So just to go back on the issue of the, branding, national branding, we'll talk about Dubai and how it transformed Dubai. We started over many decades. Dubai used to be known as a commercial hub, even before the discovery of oil, where we had our ancestors have their travels, they used to go to Africa, to India, and other countries in the GCC region. After the discovery of oil and independence from the British colony, we were heavily dependent on oil revenues from the oil and gas. But right after that, in the 80s, and especially in 86, this is where it hit us most. The price of oil dropped sharply to reach $6 per barrel. $6 per barrel. So this is what prompted us to look into other means of diversifying, of other ways to diversify our economy, just instead of depending on oil and gas. So we looked into tourism and trade as, again, revitalizing, talking about revitalizing one area, it was the trade area. So we looked into trade as well as in tourism as a mean to support our economy. And we worked heavily on that until end of the 90s when a visionary leader, he came in and he said, we want to transform Dubai to be a city that is based on knowledge economy by 2020. That is the Vice President of the UAE, Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, and he is the ruler of Dubai. Since being the ruler of Dubai, he set up the vision. He's a visionary leader, the mission. Our objective here is to execute that. We have to set the strategy. Then we set up a plan, then we execute in order to transform Dubai into a city that is based on knowledge economy by 2020. So what we did in 1999 and 2000, we started with the first setup of a free zone called Dubai Internet City, to transform Dubai to be a city that's based on knowledge economy. So we started with the Internet City, and after the emergence of Internet City, 2 years after that, we started with the Media City. Then after that, in 2003, with the Knowledge Village, where I'm heading it right now. So this is the start now. We are taking steps diligently. We have to do the due diligence before we start to set up such free zones. Let me talk the education. Let me just at least focus on the education part of it. We started in 2003 with few universities there, 6 universities, with also some of the HR companies, around 70 or 80 HR and training institutes. After 5 years of having and attracting international higher education providers, HR companies, professional development centers, and assessment centers, right now we have the nexus of around 450, 500 companies operating in Knowledge Village. These companies are rendering a service not to Dubai or the UAE, they're rendering a service for the entire region, a region that is with a total population of 1.8 billion inhabitants, with a total GDP of around $2 trillion US. And this is where we come in. We attract these international higher education providers and institutes and training institutes and HR companies to cater to these needs. And also we have to match our strategy with the Dubai strategy that's been set recently by His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid. That strategy will at least focus on how Dubai would be by 2015. And the first, of course, it consists of 5 major streams. The first one will be creating and developing the human capital. Creating and developing human capital. So this is where the area, of course, we have to focus on. So in Knowledge Village, we had these educational entities were quite mixed in nature, where we have universities and colleges, we had HR and training. So we wanted to segregate that. So what I did last year, we launched another free zone dedicated primarily to host international higher education providers, universities. Now, right now we have around 30 academic institutions or universities and colleges catering the needs of around 13,000, 14,000 students. Don't forget that we started only 5 years ago. So having 14,000 students is not bad. It's not bad at all. To tell you the truth, more than 35% of these students who are enrolled in these universities are transnational students. They come from abroad to Dubai to study there. And the objective is for these students, after we have conducted this comprehensive survey, that the objective is not just to earn a degree in Dubai, but also looking for job opportunities, to create these job opportunities for them. After they graduate, they would stay there. And be in a multicultural environment that they are in, they will be exposed to this kind of culture and also enriched with their knowledge, and it will really enhance their knowledge. So this is part of it, part of the exercise, part of the experiment that they will go through. So in Dubai, what we have achieved so far, we haven't achieved much, to tell you the truth, because the vision of our leader, he said by 2010 we are going to achieve only 10% of what we would like to achieve. Only 10%. Still there is like 90% more to go. Now, when it comes to the international presence, now why we are attracting international higher education providers? Why we are not focusing on our national higher education providers? Education has been a prime challenge for us for the past 3 decades. For the past 3 decades, it's been really a major dilemma for the even faculty members, for the parents, the students. We are not having quality education. Even industries are they reached a point in the beginning of this century that they were quite disappointed with regards to the quantity, not only quantity but also quality of the graduates leaving the universities. So this is what really prompted us. We have to survey, we have to conduct that survey to see whether we are on the positive track or not. By attracting these international higher education providers was a step in the right direction for us. We wanted to uplift the higher education system in the country and in the region. And that's what we did. And with that, of course, we have brought these premier institutions for them to internationalize, as well as for us to uplift the higher education system. And believe it or not now, the government has taken positive steps since for the past 3 years now in focusing on education and healthcare. Just a couple of weeks ago, the budget for 2009 came out for the UAE, and a quarter of that budget was allocated for education. A quarter, nearly a quarter of that budget was dedicated for education. So now the government is taking serious steps and remedy this situation we are in. From our end, of course, we are for-profit organizations, but also we have to cater the needs of the region. We look into what's needed there in the region, and we attract international universities, colleges, vocational institutes, training, HR companies to cater the needs of the region and industries, because they have serious needs there. Now, focusing on branding here now, we weren't much, I would say, popular in the 70s about being a tourist hub. Dubai, up to now, Dubai is well perceived to be trade and tourism with 2 T's. You start with 2 T's. Trade and tourism. We are well known worldwide. But now we are adding another element, another component, which is the education. And this is a challenge. You need to add that. Of course, with education, we are going to go through, we are going to pass our path to transforming Dubai into a city that is based on knowledge economy. Now, we have to, our role is with new initiatives that are launched every day we see in Dubai, in the UAE, we have to look at them. What are the needs there? I will give you just a few examples. 2 years ago, Dubai government launched creation of an airport, which is going to be the largest airport in the world. And it's called Dubai World Central. It's in very close proximity to Knowledge Village, it's like a few kilometers from there. Now, from our end, we have to look into what are the human resources required to cater the needs of this kind of industry. We're talking about the needs in terms of needs for those who have backgrounds in aerospace and aeronautics, as well as in aviation. Around 55,000 personnel needed within 3 years from now. 3 years from now. So how can we cater that need? So this is our job now. We have to look into how can we attract training institutes, HR companies, as well as universities to offer such programs. Maybe comes in not only in terms of degree programs, but also to develop the skill sets required for the people who are working there or for the workforce to compete in the competitive marketplace. So this is a challenge we face. Sometimes we face a huge challenge. All of a sudden you see these new initiatives, so you have to look into the needs. Okay, now you have Dubai World Central, you have to meet that need. When it comes to EMAL, a project that has been launched by the government of Abu Dhabi last year. EMAL is Emirates aluminum company where we have in Dubai, Dubal. Dubal is the 7th largest aluminum smelter company in the world. Now what we are building in the UAE, in Abu Dhabi, the largest aluminum smelter company in the world. So just imagine how many engineers and metal engineering materials and science we need in this area to at least to cater that need. In Doval we have around 7,000 engineers and technicians and scientists working there. So just imagine in terms of having, you know, the scale of having the largest aluminum smelter in the world. So we have to cater that need from our end. So we look into these initiatives and projects that are carried out not only in Dubai but throughout the UAE as well as in the region. And we have to, this is our objective, and strategy is to cater these needs. Then it comes in the awareness from our end. We sit with the parents, with the students, and sometimes I go to the high schools, I conduct seminars. I try to guide them which direction to take. Students, they might like history, for example. We tell them, okay, now history, that's good, but after 4 years of graduation, you might face some difficulty in employment. These are the areas, the sectors that are needed the most in terms of the workplace. So it is their choice. We have to show them the path and guide them. We need to look into other ways into at least to enrich Dubai to be the city that is based on knowledge economy. Now, we are talking about the branding here, and one thing is focusing on what you are good at. Focusing on what you are good at. What's your niche? You need to capitalize on that. We started with the tourism in 85, 86, in the year 85, 86, focusing much more on tourism in 85, 86, 87. And we excelled in that over the years until end of last century. In the beginning of the century, we were really way ahead of major cities in our region. So we said, okay, why don't we focus on that? Why don't we capitalize on that? And of course, marketing and promotion plays a key role in that. You have to spend at least somewhere between 3 to 5% of your revenues on marketing. If you don't do that, you won't achieve what you are going to achieve, at least. And if it is an emerging brand, of course, you have to spend more even, up to 7%. But this is the requirement in order to excel and to be well known. Now, Dubai always been said, okay, Dubai is well known trade and tourism. Tourism because we have been focusing and leveraging on that area and that sector. So this is very important. And talking about tourism, for example, now that's another sector that we have to cater the needs here. A challenge that I personally face, is to look into what's required in the tourism industry. By 2020, around 1.5 million personnel needed in the area of hospitality and tourism. In hospitality and tourism, just imagine what we are talking about here now. We are talking on a scale of 100,000 graduates every year from now until 2020, at least. So how can we cater that need? We don't have schools for tourism. We have 1 or 2 from Jumeirah, one of our sister companies. And what they produce is a fraction of what we require. So we have to attract international higher education providers, training institutes, to at least cater their needs. And also we have to direct these students and anyone who's interested to pursue that line, because there is a huge demand there. So we look into that demand and we try to fulfill it by at least attracting the training institutes or the professional development center or the university to cater that need. And it is it's quite a challenge. All the time, we face challenges across the road, and we have to set our strategy straight. Every year we set and we fine-tune our strategy. The strategy is not fixed for us. We have to fine-tune it as the market is being so dynamic in our region. And of course, we have to take into the consideration the element of competition here now. We have other cities competing with Dubai in our region. For example, you have Abu Dhabi, you have Qatar, for example, Doha. They want to compete with Dubai. We don't want to compare ourselves with other cities, but we have excelled in many areas. One important area I'd like to just emphasize is the expatriate workforce. Now, our doors until now has been wide open for the expatriate workforce and for the talent to come into Dubai. And this is where we are now. We have to unlock their potentials in creativity and innovation. And we are so grateful and acknowledge the fact that they have contributed so greatly. And without the expatriates, we wouldn't achieve what we have achieved in terms of the economic and social development. And this is a fact. It will be addressed by anyone and to be acknowledged by anyone who lives in Dubai and who is from Dubai. 90% of our workforce are expatriates in comparison to Singapore, where you have a quarter of that are expatriate workforce. For us, it is needed. You cannot work alone. If you want to excel, if you want to have that brand name, you have to let others contribute. You have to open up the doors and let the others come in, and you have to facilitate in creativity and innovation. That's what we have done. With them, of course, we have created some few things, initiatives that everybody's talking about, with the Palm Island, 7-star hotel, and many other initiatives. The ski slope, for example, where you can ski in the middle of the desert. So these initiatives and projects, they are not, they don't come in overnight just like that. No, this is the byproduct of working together with the expatriate workforce, with the locals, working together on such initiatives and projects in order to make Dubai city of what it is now. So these are bold and ambitious projects. You have to take sometimes bold steps and ambitious steps. You know, yes, we are going to do this, and this is what's going to create the name of Dubai. I'm sure Dubai is always linked now with the 7-star hotel. Always. When you see the 7-star hotel, you will say, yes, that's Dubai. When you see the Palm Island, you will say, yes, that is Dubai. So this is the way it comes in now. Also, this is another way we can focus, where maybe, for example, in Korea, you can focus on some area, capitalize on that. Nobody has done it. Nobody has done it, which is a challenge, and you do it. So, of course, we do the due diligence. We worked on it, and it's not just like that. Haphazardly, we engage into these types of initiatives and projects. In Qatar and Abu Dhabi, it's great. These initiatives that they are carrying out, in terms of competition, that's good. Always it's a healthy competition. So after we created these islands, the others started to depict the same picture, the same model. But don't forget, we started first. So this is one thing. You have to start that. People don't remember others what they did. It's who did it first. Always, who did it first. That's the way to go. Nobody created the 7-star hotel. We started to create that. And the islands, and even the ski slope. Nobody did it before. So we did it. So that's the way to go in order to brand the city. Let me just touch a little bit touch on the HR and the economy. A recent survey was conducted by Gulf Talent, which is one of our business partners, with regards to the workforce or expatriate workforce living in the GCC countries. And around 66% of those who are living outside the UAE, they said they would like to go to the UAE to learn more and also develop their skills and also to engage into this kind of these projects, initiatives that are carried out over there in Dubai. 66%. And when it comes to retention, 77% of those who are living in Dubai, they said they will stay there and remain there in Dubai. Of course, this is what you're talking about, attraction and retention. With all the inflation that we have been experiencing, phenomenal, really. The rate is like around 15.2, as estimated recently, 15.2% inflation. With all the challenges we face, still we have the people stay there and they would like to learn more and engage into these types of activities. Now, this is about it. When it comes to, of course, in branding, that's all I can say. You know, you have to focus on the areas that you are good at. You know, Harvard is well known in law. They say Harvard Law School, you know. So MIT is in science and engineering, and that's the way they are. They promote themselves at what you are good at. And also, if you want to make that brand name, you have to take initiative or carry on or launch an initiative that nobody did it before. So you build the name, and your name will be associated with that initiative. That's the only way to go. That's the only way to go. Thank you very much, and I will be glad to take up any questions or any comments that you might have with regards to higher education or the economy of Dubai. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much to presenters. I think we have two distinctively important and very comparable presentations. One on the concept of nation branding by Professor Kim, and then Executive Director Kazim has provided us very kindly on what is going on in Dubai in terms of its growth strategy and the evolution of Dubai, which is undoubtedly the symbol in benchmark for us as well as for others in developing the nation or the state as using its sort of predominance on its name. Well, indeed, we have about half an hour for Q&A, but before we have this presentation, let me give you a very interesting research that I've conducted in some recent years, because indeed we must be thinking of the reason why we are studying nation brand. Well, are we using or are we studying nation brand just for the curiosity, or for the intellectual stimulation, or what? So does it have any purpose? Is there any way to utilize nation brand? I think there are. And one of the ways to use nation brand is to gain something from the point of view of a national economy. Then how do we gain this or something from enhancement of national image or nation brand? Here I'd like to present to you the following. That is, this one. Actually, I have been conducting this national brand of about 30 some countries in the past few years, and here is my summary of what has been done last year. What I do is, first I develop a concept of nation brand value and develop a construct. My way of defining nation brand value is a combination of three things. The first is the substance, the other is a sort of ways to enhance the substance. There are two components in the substance. One is the economic term, the other is non-economic term, which I aggregate and use the word nation brand, national image. So on the left, national image is composed of two things. One is national competitiveness, which is more or less economic term. The other is psychological proximity. For example, when you think of a nation, you think of two aspects of a nation. One is how strong that nation is in terms of its economic prosperity. If you see a certain nation to be economically prosperous, then you think that the country has some brand value. But at the same time, when you feel very close to that certain nation, because of some religion, because of some language similarity, or because of anything else, you feel very close, and therefore your assessment of the brand value of the nation is bigger. So this is psychological proximity. So these two things are substance. And then you multiply that to a very specific and conscious strategy that nation adopts to enhance this substance in the eyes of the people all over the world. So if you combine the two, well, three things, two substance and one strategy, then you come up with national brand or nation brand. Well, let me just skip all of these things, but the way I analyzed was using this nation brand value as a kind of ways to enhance overall wealth of a nation. I thought of three subjects, three applications. When you have a better brand value of a nation, certainly that will add to increasing the export volume of products and services. At the same time, if you have higher brand image, then perhaps you can bring in more tourists and business people. And if you combine these three things, that is exportation of products and service, exportation of products, exportation of service, and then the revenue that come from the tourism, then that becomes this the substance to which nation brand is applied. And these figures show how big are these exportation of products and services and tourism revenue. Well, United States is by far the largest, followed by these countries, and Korea stands around number 11. And then this is power, brand power, which is a combination of its economic competitiveness, non-economic psychological proximity, combined with national strategy. So here, United States shows brand power value of 0.6699. What that means is if the United States export $1, then it's very conceivable that 67 cents of that $1 exportation comes from the brand value of United States. In the case of United Kingdom, it will be about 62 cents. In Germany, 55, and so on. In the case of Korea, it might be around 30 cents. And if you multiply the two, then you come up with this brand, nation brand value. And among 40 countries that I have studied using the overseas offices of KOTRA, Korea Trade and Investment Promotion Agency, I came up with the rank of Korea, number 10, followed after these United States, Germany, United Kingdom, Japan, France, Canada, China, Italy, and Netherlands. Although Professor Arnold's figure shows Korea stands around 30, I think there is big discount. I think Korea is better than 30 because of the fact that Korea's export volume is around 10 or 11. That manifests itself of the power of Korea as a nation to be reckoned with. However, and if you compare the brand value of Korea between 2006 and 2007, it's about the same, although there is a slight increase in the dollar term. What that means is, on the left, on the right, it shows the brand value of Korea last year, and that value was $873 billion. What that means is, literally speaking, if someone who is really rich enough, like Executive Director Kazim. I'm sure that he's very rich, right? And let's suppose he wants to buy the name Korea from the Korean people. And he sends us a check, a blank check. And then Korean people are free to write the amount of money in exchange for giving away the name Korea to Executive Director Kazim. Then how much should we write? Well, the value would be $873 billion. So if Dr. Kazim has $873 billion, then he can buy the name Korea from us. So this is the way we construct the nation brand value. With this way, we can find a strategy how to enhance Korea's brand value. That is, well, there are three ways. The first thing, we can increase the level of economic competitiveness. Then our nation brand value will go up. The second thing is for us to enhance psychological proximity of the people in various countries in the world. So if people in other parts of the world feel Korea closer, then our brand image will go up. That's why Korea spends fortune in enhancing the image of Korea by sending some cultural teams for dance, music, and fine arts and so on in other countries, so that people in other countries are more aware of Korean culture and others, and as a result, feel closer. The third thing is to use a very concerted strategies so that the substance can be multiplied. Well, this shows that although we can find some aggregate value of a country's nation brand value, this brand value is perceived differently by different people in different countries. So Korea, for example, by 7 scale measure, is felt, the brand value of Korea is felt at 4.65 by the people in Asia. By Europeans, Korea is judged to be 4.1. By the people in Middle East and Africa, it's 4.59. By people in America, it is 4.28. This shows that Europeans consider Korea the lowest, while people in Asia and people in Middle East and Africa consider Korea much higher in their value. In China, for example, is perceived to be very low by Europeans, but by Asians, quite okay. Japan, almost the same. And then Americans are considered quite low by Middle Eastern people and Africans. So indeed, a nation's brand value is not the same across region. So by identifying the brand value perceived by the different people in different regions or different countries or different continents, then we can develop nation brand strategies focusing on different regions or countries. Well, this is let me take one more thing. That is, what I've done is more or less macroeconomic approach to brand value of a nation. But here we can have another very interesting survey. That is, it is at the micro level. I have developed a hypothetical question. That is, there is a lady, Claire, who is a friend of yours, who has a job in a local department store. And she, as a person working in that department store, is given a mission in a skincare corner of the department store. And her assignment is to set the price for a large inventory of various soap products. And this soap is hypothetically called Mano. And she knows that this Mano is a brand name shared by small, obscure manufacturers in 40 different countries. In other words, this soap Mano has been produced by people in 40 different countries. And then customers to this department store are expected to choose this soap solely by looking at the price printed on the country of origin tag, which shows where this particular soap was manufactured. And each pack of Mano soap contains 4 bars, and the benchmark price is $10. So in other words, for each piece, it's $2.50 per piece of soap. She must make sure that all 40 Mano soap products are evenly sold over the weekend so that there will be no stock inventory left, nor rain check issued for shortage of supply. And Claire is at a loss what to do with this assignment. Therefore, she is asking you, who is an expert on nation brand image of these 40 different countries. So you are advising her what price you would put for each of these soap product, using $10 as a benchmark. And you're given a survey, questionnaire. And then I did it for 30 people in 40 different countries, so 1,200 people altogether. And this is the result. So these 1,200 people considered Switzerland and United Kingdom the best place for producing soap, and therefore they would be willing to pay $15 for the same soap. The German produced soap, $14.84. For the soap produced in the United States with the same brand, $14.76, and so on. Korean made soap would be priced at $12.70, and so on. So here, Korean, the value of Korea as a nation brand would have $2.17 premium over $10 benchmark. However, there are some countries like India and China where the products or the soap produced in these countries would be discounted. The product produced in China would have a discount of $2.50. So this is the kind of hypothetical situation where consumers would be willing to pay a certain amount of money for the product produced in different countries. And then for different countries, the price or the value on this soap would be priced differently. In this case, the Korean produced soap would be valued differently. Asian people would be willing to pay $13.16 for this Korean produced soap. Europeans would pay only $8.92. But people in Middle East would be willing to pay $16.68. Americans, $12, and so on. So different countries would value nation brand differently. And this shows the comparison between nation brand value, aggregate, and then this price premium charged or put on this soap. And there is a very high correlation. Statistically tested, the correlation coefficient between the two was 0.842. So indeed, if you have higher brand value, then it is very likely that you can charge higher price on the products produced in that particular country. So I guess that is the kind of utility that this nation brand has for the economy and for the overall value of the country. So this is a hypothetical issue, but indeed we can use nation brand for a number of ways, such as this one. So shall we open our discussion to the floor? Comments or questions to each other? Sure. So now the floor is open. So 한국말로 질문하셔도 좋고요, 코멘트 하셔도 좋고요. I think we have Professor Kim Jae-bong. He has many comments and questions and criticism. Would you please?
Well, I have a quick question to Professor You-Kyung Kim from Hankuk University of Foreign Studies. I'm sure that you have conducted a lot of research on Korean branding for the last few years at least. So I'd like to learn more about what you think about the future strategy or plan of the Korean branding.
Thank you. It's kind of knife and fork. Very comprehensive question, but very important. The strategy, from the strategic point of view and branding the nation, is hard to tell, in a simplistic way. But what I'm going to have to tell you is, we have to follow the guidelines from the strategic brand management process. Like I said, we have to have the substance. So far, we've been playing with only the campaigns, with the campaign messages, the dynamic Korea, Korea sparkling, in the tourism, and the IT Korea and premium Korea in export area. So many messages were playing, but without the strategic point of view, and without controlling or managing by being managed by the leadership or control tower, which is now being launched, by the President Lee as National Brand Committee. I suggest that our strategic the process should start from substance. We have to have the substance. What is our national identity? What to say? What are we supposed to say to our domestic to our people and the foreigners? The dynamic Korea or other campaign messages can we may be satisfied with those campaign messages, but not in overseas. That those campaign messages are not derived from national identity. I suggest that to hold some meetings, to excavate some essence of our identity. Is that we have 5,000 year history. Some do not agree with that, but we can just suppose that we have a 5,000 year history. But we do not know what's our national identity. That is very important. Now, our identity is practically or experientially, we have a morning calmness. Land of morning calm is our identity. Many people say that many people assume that our people are very kind and very, reserved, or something like those in the properties and characteristics have. That's why we do not agree with the dynamism. Especially opinion leaders do not agree with that. That we have to. So my bottom line is, we have to start with the substance. We have to develop that substance first, national identity, and then have to branding that national identity. Nation brand identity is wrong. I think branding the national identity is right. So that point we have to, from that point we have to apply things across the multiple categories. We have to embed such meanings with the cultural heritage and the tourism and the export side. So those are top parts of a strategic should take precedence over any other activities, and then all the way goes to the evaluation. That is my strategic point of view.
So in essence, he has proposed two things. First, we have to improve the substance by more clearly identifying our national identity, and then package it with better branding. And he questions the wisdom of Dynamic Korea, right? Yes. Do you have any better alternative than Dynamic Korea?
Like you said, I remember when you said if we get rid of Dynamic Korea, this government will be destroyed, something like that. Because we've been spending a lot of money in promoting Dynamic Korea. Whether we like or not, we have to revitalize. If we have some problem, we have to revitalize, or we have retransform and revitalize. Rebranding is all different concepts, but I don't have time to explain all of these things. But in this case, I think a revitalization strategy should be applied. Dynamic Korea is fine. Endorsed by that Dynamic Korea, I and Simon Anholt created Korea Sparkling. Korea Sparkling was derived from Dynamic Korea. That's functional dynamism, but Sparkling Korea is emotional dynamism. I have to move on to the intellectual dynamism based on our IT heritage. That's my.
So dynamism is okay, but what should be moving on is important. By the way, Dr. Kazim, if there is a national sort of slogan called Dynamic Korea, what is Dubai's equivalent?
It's going to be a very tough question. Maybe you can call it also Dynamic Dubai. Why not? Dubai has been associated with many names, and even there was a song back in Dubai, sung by one of the British singers. So one thing is, Dubai cannot associate with itself with one name at this point of time, since many things are changing over there, the pace, the time that we spend over there, and you have seen, Professor Cho, how things change and evolve within a short period of time. So I think it will be quite difficult for Dubai to associate itself to a certain name and stick to it for a long period of time. Yes.
Versatile Dubai.
It could be for time being, yeah, versatile, but maybe after a year or two it will be obsolete.
Of course.
Yes.
If I add one more thing is, if we use Dynamic Korea, it will not be helpful in promoting our export side. Dynamism, it doesn't help at all. So we have to attach more importance on the WT side. So Dynamic Korea will have a brick and mortar image. We need a click and mortar image. It's on the basis of our IT heritage. So what I'm trying to say is, we can use that Dynamic Korea with other more advanced concepts. So we have to have a dual strategy, dual operation, dual campaign operation, and then if time goes by, then we can, the Dynamic Korea will fade away naturally. That's my strategy.
Right? One important thing is, when it comes to branding, is how do you want the others to perceive you? It is very important. This need to be done properly. A survey, a benchmark should be done, at least to look at it and see, okay, now how do you like people or other countries, other nations, other regions to perceive you as what? Then from there you build on, and you have to believe in it. Yes, we can be like Versatile Dubai or like Dynamic Korea, so you have to see it from the others. How do you like the others to perceive you? How do you want them to perceive you?
And as Koreans, we have difficulty in objectively reviewing the wisdom of this dynamic Korea. But as a person looking at this from outside, do you think this dynamic Korea having a positive image or not?
Of course, it is positive. Always is positive. And I always give an example of Korea to some of the lectures I had attended and seminars a few weeks ago. And I gave Korea as an example of how things are with the Korean people. 25 years ago, the GDP of Korea per capita was lower than Egypt.
Yes.
And now it is the 12th largest economy in the world. And they're going to be a group of 8 soon. This is the way to go, and I give him as a role model, as an example. Yes, you have to look into this. The will of the people, they want to, they're determined to reach there. So it can happen, of course. You have to look into that. You have to associate many parameters with the slogan that you're going to associate with, yes.
Well, I'm sure that the Korean government would be very pleased to hear what you've said. Well, any comments, questions? Yes, please. Please, microphone.
Hi, good morning. It was a very interesting discussion we heard so far. And since he raised a question about that we need a substance in order to grind our national image and so forth, then do you have any idea what kind of substance we can think of? We talk about 5,000 years old, country and the morning calm and all those things. And this morning calm versus the dynamic is really, it's a funny combination, So people from outside, they are kind of confused, So it is true that we need a substance in order to promote or whatever. Then do you have any idea about it?
In the morning we are very calm, in the evening we are very dynamic. But there is a confusion, certainly. So, any answers?
Yes, she's quite right. Yes, as I mentioned earlier in my paper, we have the essential identity, the land of money calm. Everyone, implicitly and practically, experientially agree with that. We are very calm and quiet people, and very kind people, treating people, very kindly and friendly. Those kind of the properties and the characteristics are mine, ours. Sorry. But certainly, all of a sudden, so we have a dynamism, and we have to acclimate ourselves to a new environmental campaign. So this one, how would you interpret this one? What I've been interpreting this one, the essential identity should be the land of morning calm. That flows for 5,000 years. But dynamic Korea is got kind of constructive identity. We can change, we can modify. But the problem is the wording. Dynamic Korea has a different, very many different kinds of dimensions, very positive dimensions. Intellectual dynamism with Lee Sun-sin and Baek Nam-jun, and kind of Won Yi-ho. Those peoples are from, their results, in the dynamism, the Korean dynamism. That's intellectual point of view. We can have all different kind of interpretation, and application. That's why dynamic Korea is okay, but not in advanced country, not in North America and North American and European countries. I went there and have to have a workshop with Simon Ahold, and we have some the European people. They all said that dynamic Korea is similar. It reminds them of North Korea. So it's dynamite. At that time, the issue was, nuclear issue was. So if they have to have the chance to hear dynamism or dynamic Korea, oh, that's North Korea. That's why that will cause another misperception. Misperception, if that lasts, That will be the stereotype. So we have to change that. We have to see and diagnose, what the problem is. We can't just say, at a time and very quickly. We have to look in depth and have to take a long time consideration and gathering a lot of people from inside or outside. We have to take a look at very sincerely and positively and very aggressively. So dynamism is quite right, but it's only constructive identity. We do not have to rely on this. We do not be have to be careful in keeping this one for a long-term point of view. We can change any time, but with a strategy. We have to have a strategy.
Indeed, Professor Kim has addressed a very important, very grave issue. That is that one of the surveys showed us that the biggest image people outside Korea has on Korea is Kim Il-sung, which is very unfair to us, but that's a fact. And this dynamic Korea adds to this false impression on Korea. But it's that indeed should not be overlooked. What is your opinion as a person?
I share your views on this. Just to go back on the history, since you mentioned the history of the country. In Dubai, we don't have much history. And as you are aware of, okay, it is good to leverage on the history of the country. It would be great to do that, to leverage on it. But also, let's look into a case of Dubai, for example. We don't have a history as you have. You have a rich history, very rich history. Maybe you could capitalize on that. From our end, we lack that element. Let's just take an example here. Let's compare ourselves with the city of Dubai, a small city of Dubai of around now reaching 2 million inhabitants, with Egypt. Egypt with a population of what now? 70 million? 80? Something in the ballpark of 80 million inhabitants. Egypt with a history of 3,000 years, with the pharaohs, with the pyramids and all the ancient ruins that they have over there in Egypt. Now let's look into the people who are interested to go the countries or the cities, like for example Dubai and Egypt, the country of Egypt. Last year we had around 6,000 tourists coming to Dubai. 6 million tourists to Dubai, small city of Dubai. On the other hand, in Egypt, with a history of 3,000 years, they had only 5 million tourists. So we can depend on that, but I mean, it seems to me now Egyptians are looking at us now. How did they do it? A small city like Dubai, having that many people coming in, flooding, they want to know more about Dubai. We have a heritage, we have customs, but we don't have a history, a rich history like Egypt or even Korea. So this is an area maybe you could leverage on. Now the Egyptians are thinking of how can they leverage on their history. So that's the way to go maybe. Yes, so from our end we couldn't because we lack this element. Yeah.
Well, there is a big lesson to be learned from your comment. Any comments from what you have been hearing from our distinguished panelists? Perhaps you can propose a new idea that can replace Dynamic Korea.
What do you think of the sparkling Korean sparkling?
Microphone, please.
No, it's sparkling. They hear, oh, it's like a drink, soda or something. It doesn't have a really good, solid, philosophical, backbone behind it. It sounds so light and vanishing, something like that. So it's from the dynamic, it's too far off, in different images. So people get confused. What Korea wants to sell, what kind of image do they want to, appeal, and so forth. So I'm just really curious how Dubai could attract all those people in such a short time from all over the world.
Yeah, it beats me. Just going back again to the sparkling, also sparkling is like a bubble, could be a bubble that could burst.
Yes.
So you don't want to associate yourself with a bubble here or something that will burst or something that will vanish in just a short period of time. You know, where you see these sparklings, you know, just for a period of time, that's it, it will vanish. So maybe that's my point of view, you know. I think, you know, it could be good, but another way, maybe you can look at it this for the short term, I guess, yeah, sparkling. Like a, yeah. Yes.
Once you set it up and then do it,
Yes.
start doing it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, we have been focusing so much on the tourism and trade, and with the, of course, adding the element of education and other areas, transport, logistics, with Emirates Airlines, with the Dubai Ports World. As Dubai Airlines, you know, going everywhere in the world, of course, they are promoting Dubai. You have transport where you have, well, transport and logistics with Dubai Ports World. They are managing more than 100 ports in the world. I don't know how many, maybe you know. So they are not only managing these ports, but they are also promoting the name of Dubai. Now it's Dubai, the brand name. With all the, we have a very high living standard that we have over there. It's really abnormal. But people start to ask the other day, the Minister of Economy, the living is so high, living standard is so high, people will be maybe forced to leave. She said, well, it depends on the restaurant that you go to. Do you want to go to a 5-star restaurant or to a 2-star restaurant? That's up to you. So Dubai, think of it as a 5-star restaurant. It's a name that you're paying for the name of itself. Yeah. So that's why.
well, important. Well, given the fact that we are allowed to have time until 11:30 and already we are 9 minutes over, perhaps it's time that we can close. Before we close, would you have just 1 minute summary?
Thank you very much. I understand that now the government, you know, in terms of the brand and nation branding, they are very afraid of changing dynamic Korea. But they want to change that. How is important? In what way, right? They need to have a strategic viewpoint, and they have to persuade people to accept that, especially press and opinion leaders. But they are searching for that answer. But at this point, you know, that's the task for everyone, not just for opinion leaders. Or if the campaign can change, if we wanna transform our current image, we can change that. But we do not have to be afraid of that. But we have to, once it sets up, we have to be persuaded, and then we have to make a contribution to promote that to the outside and on the inside. I think that attitude and the sense is important.
Great.
Well, I can't agree more with the Professor Kim on this. You know, the government plays a key role when it comes to branding, national branding. The government should take proactive steps in branding the country, the city of Seoul and the country, Korea, and also the corporates, they play a role in this as well. As they go abroad, internationalize with these huge names that you have, the LG, Samsung and others, they are ambassadors, they could start to be ambassadors. They have to promote the name of Korea. That's the way to go. That's what we have been doing, as I gave you an example of Emirates Airlines and Dubai Ports World. So that's also, they have that responsibility as well, corporates. Yes.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah. Okay, one last question, please. Microphone, please. 잠깐만 기다려 주시죠.
저는 비즈니스를 하고 있는 NX의 그 대표이사 회장 박유재입니다. 오늘 이 국가 브랜딩에 대한 그 좋은 말씀들을 많이 들었습니다. 근데 이것이 이 기업 경영에도 굉장히 좀 매크로한 면에서 참고가 될 것 같아서 연재 제목이 좋아서 제가 여기에 참석했습니다. 근데 지금 우리가 브랜딩의 그 네이밍을 하는데 여러 가지로 고민을 많이 하시는 것 같고, 또 이제 유튜브에서 오신 이 장관께서도 또 거기에 대한 얘기를 잘해 주셔서 잘 들었습니다. 저는 참고로 지금 이 자리에 와서 교수님들 말씀을 듣고 나서 즉흥적으로 좀 생각되는 게 있어서 앞으로 그 네이밍을 하는데 참고가 혹시 될 수도 있을까 모르겠습니다만은 또 될 수 있다고 생각해서 말씀을 드립니다. 우리가 지금 자랑할 수 있는, 이 대한민국을 자랑할 수 있는 것을 여러 가지 있겠지만 세 가지 측면에서 하나 봤습니다. 첫째, 우리 5,000년 전에 단군 할아버지의 국가 건국 이념이 홍익인간이었습니다. 그러니까 벌써 우리는 이 국태민안과 그리고 민주적인 사고방식을 5,000년 전에 오랜 역사 전에서부터 건국 이념으로 가지고 있었다는 거, 이런 것도 좋은 우리의 장점이 될 수 있는 게 아니겠는가를 하나 생각해 봤고요. 그 다음에는 신라가 삼국통일을 하고 신라 때 굉장히 참 부흥하고 발전하고 이런 우리가 이 국력을 가지고 있었습니다. 그런데 그때 그것이 화랑정신, 그 당시에 화랑정신이 우리 민족의 하나의 정신으로서 전통적으로 발전이 되는 것이 바람직한 이런 거가 될 수 있지 않겠느냐. 이 점하고, 그 다음에 현대에 와서는요, 이 삼성이라든가 현대가 우리가 GNP 100불도 안 되는 이런 속에서 지금 2만 불 단계로 50년 동안에 이게 돼 왔는데, 여기에서는 우리의 저력, 그리고 우리의 어떤 민족적인 역량의 하나의 강점이 있는 거 아니겠느냐. 이렇게 해서 지금 즉흥적으로 생각하는 세 가지 정도를 좀 생각해 봤는데요. 참고로 하셔가지고 좀 생각해 주셨으면 감사하겠다 하는 말씀을 드리고 제가 말씀 끝내겠습니다.
예.
감사합니다.
감사합니다. Well, thank you very much for your pointing out three elements in our history in the past and the present time. 홍익인간, 화랑도, and these major companies having their presence in the world. And I think it will be very important issues for us, for all of us in Korea to think of the future naming or branding of Korea. Well, perhaps it's time that we conclude our session, and it seems to me that there are three lessons that we need to be reminded of from this session. The first thing is that in nation branding, substance is very important. The substance is to clearly identify what we are, so in the name of nation identity. And indeed, the two speakers as well as people in the floor have mentioned a number of ways to identify who we are, what Korea is, and I think there is a need for us to study this one further. The second issue is how to take advantage of this substance in the form of nation brand strategy. And indeed, Executive Director Kazim has proposed a very important thing, that is, in order to carry out this strategy, we have to use major Korean companies like Samsung, Hyundai, LG, and so on, because they are the probably best vehicle to enhance or to promote the image of Korea. And then perhaps we may have to rethink the present identities that we have, such as Dynamic Korea, Korea Sparkling. Indeed, we have IT Korea, and I had once listed all the brand names associated with Korea, and I had more than 20. Each ministry in Korea has its own brand. So indeed, there is no coordination at the government level. So if there is no coordination at the government level, then what will be if we think of the whole nation? So there is a very well coordinated and concerted effort for us to conform on this nation brand issue. But at the same time, as Executive Director has mentioned, Kazim has mentioned, we should not be afraid of having multiple nation brand or changing the present nation brand, because country always evolves and changes, and this nation brand should be moving along with that. So using that as the lesson that we learned from this session, let me have the pleasure of concluding this session with big applause to these two distinguished speakers. 고맙습니다.